Long before pizza meant gooey cheese, tomato sauce, and a perfect slice you could hold in your hand, the idea of taking bread and putting tasty things on it was already ancient. Imagine yourself in the Mediterranean more than 2,000 years ago, where people were already baking flatbreads, simple rounds of dough laid over hot stones or in ovens, warmed and crisped. These were not pizzas as we know them, but they were the earliest whispers of an idea that would one day sweep the world. In the dusty records of ancient times, we find references to soldiers of the Persian Empire in the 6th century BCE baking flat bread on their shields, topping it with cheese and dates. Think about that image: warriors cooking food on the very tools of war. That dish was simple, nourishing, and portable, much like pizza would later become, and it showed how universal the concept of flatbread with toppings was even back then. A little later, ancient Greeks had their own versions of flatbread, called plakos, flavored with herbs, onions, cheese, and garlic. And the Romans had something similar too. They called their breads panis vocacious, and they would dress them up with olive oil, herbs, cheese, or even honey in some cases. These foods were ubiquitous, cheap, simple, everyday nourishment for people across the Mediterranean. But even though many ancient cultures made flatbreads with toppings, nobody yet called it pizza, nor did they have the combination of tomato and cheese that we now think of as quintessential. That came much later, and it came through a twist of world history. Fast forward closer to the medieval era, and we find the first recorded use of the word pizza itself in a document from the year 997 CE in the small Italian town of Gaeta. In that record, a man was ordered to give the bishop of Gaeta 12 pizzas on certain feast days. This is the first time anyone wrote down the word pizza as we know it, even though the pizza of that time was far simpler than what you and I might recognize today. The word likely came from words meaning flatbread or snack, and over time it became associated with the flatbreads people were eating across central and southern Italy. But even then, pizza was still evolving. Its dramatic transformation into a beloved modern dish is mainly tied to the humble streets of Naples. By the 16th and 18th century, Naples, crowded, bustling, and full of people with little money, became the perfect birthplace for what we'd recognize as today's pizza. Poor workers and street vendors baked dough in wood-fired ovens and topped it with what was available: olive oil, herbs, garlic, maybe anchovies or cheese. These pizzas were affordable, portable, and satisfying, perfect for the working class who couldn't afford a sit-down meal. Something big happened around this time that would indirectly shape the future of pizza. Tomatoes arrived in Europe from the Americas after the Columbian Exchange. At first, many Europeans thought tomatoes were poisonous, like many new foods coming from faraway lands, but over time Italians fell in love with them. And in Naples, pizza makers started spreading tomato sauce on the flatbreads. This was a game changer. For the first time, that familiar combination of bread, tomato, and later cheese began to take shape. By the late 18th and early 19th century, pizza had become a defining street food of Naples. People selling pizza moved from carrying them around to opening small shops and taverns dedicated to making and selling pizza, the world's first pizzerias. One of the most famous was Antica Pizzeria Portalba, which started as a street vendor in the 1700s and became a sit-down pizza restaurant in 1830, widely considered the first modern pizzeria. One of the most romantic stories in pizza's history, although part myth and part legend, involves Queen Margherita of Italy. In 1889, Neapolitan pizza maker Raffaele Esposito was asked to make dishes in honor of the Queen. He created 3 pizzas, but the one that caught her taste was a pizza topped with tomato, mozzarella, and basil, representing the colors of the Italian flag. That style was later named Pizza Margherita, and it became iconic. Even though Pizza Margherita probably existed before that moment, the story cemented pizza's place in Italian culture. Through the late 1800s, pizza was still mainly an Italian thing, enjoyed in Naples and gradually spreading throughout Italy. But a much bigger expansion was about to happen as millions of Italians left their homeland in search of work and opportunity, heading across the oceans to America. At the turn of the 20th century, Italian immigrants began arriving in the United States in huge numbers. Among them were pizza makers who brought their tradition with them. In cities like New York, Chicago, and Boston, Italian neighborhoods became centers of pizza making. One of the earliest licensed pizzerias in the United States was opened by Gennaro Lombardi in Manhattan in 1905. These early American pizzerias served pizza as a niche food, mostly to Italian immigrants and their descendants who missed the taste of home. But after World War II, something remarkable happened. American soldiers returning from Italy came back with a taste for pizza. They had eaten it during their time overseas, and once home, they wanted more. This sparked a boom in pizzerias across the United States. In the 1950s and 1960s, pizza began its transformation from ethnic specialty to mainstream American favorite. It appeared on television, became part of pop culture, and new styles started emerging. Chicago gave the world its deep dish pizza, thick, hearty, layered with cheese and toppings. New York perfected large foldable slices. And everywhere local cooks began experimenting, inventing regional variations that stole hearts and appetites. At the same time, pizza was no longer just something you ate in small shops. The rise of pizza chains like Pizza Hut in 1958, Domino's Pizza in 1967, and later Papa John's made pizza something that could be delivered nationwide and even globally. These companies built efficient delivery systems and franchising models that made pizza available in cities and towns around the world. By the 1970s and 1980s, pizza had truly become global. In Europe, Asia, Africa, the Americas, wherever you went, people were eating pizza. In the United States, pizza was everywhere. In diners, in big chains, in local neighborhood shops, and even frozen in grocery stores. America alone was selling billions of pizzas annually by the 1990s. But the story doesn't stop with delivery and chains. In every culture, pizza took on new forms. In Japan, toppings like squid and mayo-based sauces became common. In Brazil, green peas and corn became part of pizza toppings. In India, spicy paneer and tikka versions competed with classic Italian styles. Pizza became a canvas for local tastes and traditions. Everyone made it their own. By the early 21st century, pizza was everywhere, a staple of street food markets, a favorite party dish, a dinner option for families, and a cultural icon for young people everywhere. Pizza festivals, pizza championships, and pizza-making classes sprang up around the world, celebrating both classic and creative new styles. In 2017, the art of making traditional Neapolitan pizza was recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage, acknowledging its global cultural impact and the skill involved in its creation. By the 2020s, pizza had become one of the most popular foods on Earth, with a global market valued in the hundreds of billions of dollars, sold in millions of restaurants, and consumed by people of all ages and backgrounds. In the United States alone, a significant percentage of the population eats pizza regularly, whether at restaurants, delivered to their homes, or baked from frozen at home. Through centuries of history, pizza has transformed from simple flatbread enjoyed by ancient civilizations, to humble street food in Naples, to an internationally adored dish. It is a story of migration, cultural exchange, innovation, and love of good food, a story that continues as new generations invent new toppings, styles, and ways to enjoy it. And so when you take the first bite of a slice today, remember that you're biting into a piece of history, a legacy that stretches back thousands of years, carried forward by bakers, cooks, dreamers, and hungry people everywhere. What if I told you one of America's most iconic foods didn't even start in America? From German sausages to New York street carts and baseball stadiums. This is the incredible journey of the hot dog, how it became a global street food legend. And the story behind it is way more unexpected than you think. So for that, subscribe.